there's a new fad in town. It's called Pokémon, and it's got kids in a frenzy.
It's a Japanese term short for pocket monster.
This could be this year's Christmas boom.
And the Pokemon is creating a monster of a commotion for American kids.
That's all they're wanting now is pure Pokemon. We haven't sold any yo-yos or Star Wars merchandise in a long time.
Pokémon Jamboree is the lost 14th base set of Pokémon cards for the English version of the Pokémon TCG. The Pokémon TCG was handled very differently in Japan as it was in America, especially back in the 90s. Wizards of the Coast, an American gaming company, attained the license to the Pokémon trading card game. They were responsible for all the English cards that you saw growing up. So what is Pokémon Jamboree? The drama surrounding the game and its license led to the 14th main set of cards getting shelved, never to see daylight. That set was called Pokémon Jamboree. This video makes heavy use of vocal interviews and a few written ones from key people involved with Jamboree at that time. Those people are as follows: Mike Boozer, sometimes called DMTM or Dark Master Trader Mike, who was on Wizards R&D, crucially during the time of Jamboree.
This is Mike Boozer from Gen Con calling.
I also spoke with Mike Gills, albeit only in written. He goes by MTM, or Master Trainer Mike, and here's a screenshot of our conversation. Another Master Trainer I spoke with was Patrick Swift, or Master Trainer Pat, who was Wizards of the Coast R&D. Again, attached screenshot. The first interview I conducted was with Nick Teen, former Wizards of the Coast forum admin.
Basically, I would say 99% of the information that is out there came from me.
Very true, by the way. Up until a few years ago, he had written everything on Bulbapedia, everything that was publicly known about Jamboree. I also spoke with Peter Whitley, senior designer on Wizards of the Coast's own magazine, The Duelist, which later changed its name to Top Deck.
Thank you.
Would you like me to spell my name?
Sure. Yes, please.
Peter Whitley. Peterwhitley.
Thank you. And are you the one who worked for The Duelist, or are you the one who killed all those kids?
Yeah.
The very first thing I used to teach myself about Jamboree was Drunk Shuckle's excellent video on the subject. It covers everything that was known publicly prior to my interviews and research. I would highly recommend you give that a watch as a primer, linked here. I also use Wayback Machine all over this article. It's a website that archives old sites, especially those of the early 2000s. In fact, using Wayback Machine, we can look at Wizards.com and see this photo of Mike Boozer, Mike Gills, and Patrick Swift all together at the West Coast STS. Here's Mike Boozer of R&D mentioning he spoke with Nick Teen regarding Jamboree.
Well, I remember Nick. I'm sure I talked to Nick. I probably talked to Nick about this.
Finally, here's Peter Whitley of The Duelist, describing his time working on the magazine, being the first to cover Pokemon, and directly working with Media Factory, the Japanese creators of the Pokemon card game.
I worked on The Duelist, and The Duelist, I think, was the first magazine to introduce Pokemon domestically, logos and...
So then were you, if the channels of communication were open between Wizards and Media Factory directly, were you ever sending them English assets for... I know there was a few English promos, things like that.
I would think so, yeah, because we had to localize a lot of their stuff for English, you know.
By the way, I know that some of these voice recordings aren't the best. It's a mixture of laptop, old crappy generation iPhone, and potato with the cat screaming into it. So I'm doing my best. Alright, so now that I've kind of set it up, let's just dive right into the first interview. Wizards wanted to use Western artists to complement their Western original cards, so they approached Nick15 from the Create a Card forums.
I had made a whole bunch of Pokemon fake cards. Those were passed around in the Wizards office, so they really enjoyed it. And one of the art directors just was, we're interested in making our own set, and, you know, they want to bring in some Western artists. They're interested in having me do some of the artwork for the set.
Boozer confirmed, saying it was to be the first Wizards design set.
It was a wholly new design set that we were going to put out.
Plus many of the promos America had missed from expansion series, which Wizards would often call vending series.
The set, like, there were some vending machine cards that we were going to put in it.
Peter Whitley, senior designer for Wizards' own The Duelist magazine, also spoke on the contents of Jamboree, and he added some new wrinkles.
That card might have been developed for some early set, and it was a dumb idea, but it got kicked or punted down the road and ended up in Jamboree.
Some of the cards for Jamboree could have been Wizards' ideas that hadn't flown before.
Absolutely. Wow. Totally. Or it might have been ideas borrowed from Magic, maybe, or stupid ideas that are just ridiculous, but they make it hard.
Jamboree's playtest team was composed of Mike Boozer, Mike Gills, Mike Elliott, and Patrick Swift. Boozer still had some of Jamboree's cards and items from testing, although they were scattered in his belongings, lost in a sea of time and Tupperware. It seems like it was a free-for-all near the end, and Boozer, along with others in R&D, were allowed to keep whatever they wanted. After skirmaging around, Boozer did manage to find some of his old Jamboree goods. He came across some of Jamboree's playtests. Wizards would sometimes order entire sheets of Pokemon cards from the printer that had nothing printed on the front. By using sticky notes and Sharpies, cards could quickly be scribbled on to create playtest cards while things were still being figured out.
Yeah, when we playtested, we had Pokemon-backed cards with a yellow blank surface. And we'd write in permanent marker, what they did.
Peter Whitley added to this.
That was common practice, so they had a lot of magic in Pokemon cards that would just come back from the printer, and they would have sheets cut of blank, bright faces, and these were handy for doing quick little notes, and yeah, those are produced specifically for that purpose.
Returning to Boozer and his sea of lost items. After digging through his Tupperware for about 10 or 15 minutes, Boozer did find 3 Jamboree cards. He identified these 3 cards over the phone.
This Jolteon I'm almost 100% on it. And this Bill's advice that's definitely it. And this tech machine called Whirlwind that has C-Switch on it is definitely also some sort of a thing that we were working on. So
Boozer even took a moment to snap photos during our interview. For each of these, Boozer has one complete card with all the data, and several incomplete cards with little more than a title on top. After seeing Jamboree cards for the first time ever, I kinda had to ask Boozer if I could have some.
I'm a collector, I gotta ask, but feel free to say no. Is there any chance I could get any of those cool-ass Jamboree cards you just mentioned?
I'll tell you what. Yeah.
After the interview was over, Boozer gifted me one of each incomplete playtest card. The photo below is of my gifted set. I brought up my Jamboree cards when speaking with Patrick Swift. He elaborated, saying the following. It turns out, Bill's advice is not named after the one you might be thinking.
Bill's advice would obviously tie into the Bill card, but we also had a Bill in customer service. Gills was over there with me, and then Bill was behind me.
As for the card's effect, which is completely lost, it likely was exactly the effect of Steven's advice, a card printed by Nintendo shortly after Wizards lost the license. When I showed Boozer Steven's advice, he felt he remembered the effect and that he had written it, because of the similarity its effect has to Magic the Gathering style closet. Digging through Wizards' old archives, we can see another idea for a potential Jamboree card. In this screenshot from Wizards chat, admin MTM, that's Mike Gills to remind you, describes a card that he'd like to create for Jamboree, a Master Trainer card that would have been a spoof card, very much like the Imakuni cards and many vending cards, which often had no real effect, cards. Transcribed to modern Pokelingo, the effect probably would have read something like, flip a coin until you get tired of flipping. Nothing happens either way. These same old chat logs show that Wizards wanted to create a card contest for Jamboree, where entrants would not only design a card's art, but also all of its attacks. I think there's enough evidence around to guess at what one of the Jamboree promos would have been, too. There had already been a ton of unknown promos in Japan of many different letters. And all of them had been ported over to America except one letter, R. So probably we were going to get that, and I think it would have been released at, guess where? Toys R Us. If you don't remember, Toys R Us was a major factor in the Pokemon card game back in the day. Most official league battles were run there, and they often had exclusive promos.
Let's talk Imakuni!
Let's talk about Tomoaki Imakuni. Tomoaki Imakuni was a popular comedian at the time of the trading card game's release, as well as one of its original creators. He created many of the cards you're familiar with, such as base set Porygon. His personalized cards really made the flavor of the vending series come together. Look at these things. Love them. But, do we know how Wizards felt about Imakuni? First off, there was literally a Who is Imakuni on Wizards' official FAQ. If you enjoy watching an insane person holding it together, this FAQ is for you. Also, Boozer brought up a time he met Imakuni and how happy he was to receive a personalized card from him.
Imakuni, he did some artwork on one of his cards and gave it to me at one of the Super Trainer Showdown.
When I later spoke with Master Trainer Pat, he also remembered how much Boozer loved Imakuni.
And Mike was like, this guy is bonkers, right? And then he just knew that he could get away with whatever. He could be as corny and wacky as he wanted.
So I think there's a very strong chance that Imakuni would have been one of the main focuses of Jamboree. Returning to the subject of Jamboree's completion, I asked Master Trainer Mike how much had been successfully completed before the plug was pulled. We did complete the set, and there was some initial logo work and cover art as well. Mike Gills. Turns out Jamboree wasn't even going to be the set's final name. Speaking on that subject, Boozer confirmed it was only a beta name, likely to be changed later, which was usual practice.
Every once in a while, those names stick because of some reason or other that you came up with, and you can't come up with a better name. Jamboree would have been its code name, not the finished design set.
Do you know what the finished design set name was planned to be?
No.
But let's get to the bombshell. The biggest thing to come out of these interviews was not the photo of the cards, it was not me getting the cards. It was when Mike Boozer, former playtester for Jamboree at Wizards of the Coast, said Nintendo used the canceled Jamboree cards in their future sets.
We created this set, and then the license was pulled. So we had sent it back and forth with the Japanese, with the company several times.
Sure.
I'm pretty sure they took that set wholesale and made one of the next sets. All the work we had done, it feels like they timed it so that we would do all this work and then
Yeah.
But I remember it more as just coming out in one of their sets, the sets that they made, that they just took
Sure.
basically a lot of the cards that we had created and put them in that set.
He pointed out it was Nintendo's right to do so, by all means, but also, he clearly felt it was a dick move.
It's definitely their license. They definitely had every right to take the set that we, created and used it.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Seems like it was a dick move.
When I asked Boozer if he remembered the set that Jamboree was ultimately released in, he didn't remember the name.
I don't remember. It's a set that came out fairly soon after Jamboree, and at the time I remembered the set, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's our set. I saw the cards and I go, I helped design that card.
Me and Boozer hopped online at this point, took a small break from everything else, and we tried to figure out what the set was. I figured if I just read them in order, I could refresh his memory. It did not take long for Boozer to remember which one it was.
Let me see what...
So we've got a couple Jolteons coming out right after Skyridge.
Sandstorm.
The last set that Wizards officially released was Skyridge. The set after EX Ruby and Sapphire was EX Sandstorm, which would have been just enough time for Nintendo to reformat things, take a few months in the dev cycle, and then get the cards pushed out.
So if card R&D was done on a set, that's a very expensive and very valuable part of that set because it takes a lot of people to develop a whole set.
That said, we can clearly see the Jolteon released in EX Sandstorm and the Jolteon from Jamboree are totally different. What's up with that, Boozer? Please tell the audience.
As I recall, some cards were different.
Peter Woodley also spoke on how some of the Jamboree cards were altered and not taken completely wholesale.
And once they take it, they have every right and privilege, it's their privilege to redesign any of the cards or to retitle them or produce new art or change the wording or, delete cards altogether.
So I guess we can assume that some cards were altered before their final release.
Let me back up to the weirdness around EX Sandstorm. This set in particular is a really weird set of cards.
So Japan would always get cards first, and when we got those cards, we usually got even less. And very rarely would America get anything for Japan.
However, when EX Sandstorm released in America, there were 47 brand new cards in it that hadn't been seen anywhere else in the world. Not only is that weird on its own, but EX Sandstorm was meant to be a Gen 3 pack, a Ruby Sapphire pack.
It should have focused on Pokemon from the Gen 3 Ruby and Sapphire video game. However, of the American first release subset with an EX Sandstorm, we can see that many of the Pokemon were Gen 1 and 2 and were not featured in Gen 3 at all, such as Jolteon.
Anyway, it really feels like they were ported from Jamboree and put there. Wizards only had access to Gen 1 and Gen 2 Pokemon. So whatever Wizards made for Jamboree would have had to be either Gen 1, Gen 2 Pokemon or original Pokemon. Doesn't seem like they were interested in original Pokemon. That's why it's weird to me that there's Gen 1ers in this Gen 3 thing. So then, maybe this list of the 47 cards ported into EX Sandstorm is a list of 47 Jamboree cards.
According to Boozer, Jamboree was not going to be entirely original cards. A lot of the missed promos from various Japanese sets were going to be brought over in Jamboree, so the American meta could finally catch up to Japan.
So I was really curious what that would include, and made this big ol' list that is included below of the rest of the promos that Wizards didn't distribute. It is a lot. At one point, Wizards felt confident enough about Jamboree's release to announce it publicly. However, as we now know, it was never released officially, so what happened?
Mike Gills and other various Wizards staff said they felt what had happened was Wizards overstepped its bounds.
The Pokemon Company did not want us creating cards, just to translate and support the ones they created. We were too successful with the Pokemon TCG. As the TCG grew in popularity, it became how many new players first learned about Pokemon, and I don't think Nintendo wanted the global TCG and its organized play and leagues to get more press than the video games. I believe this is also why the license was not renewed, and the current Pokemon Company International was formed with many ex-Wizards of the Coast employees. Mike Gills. Nick15 said about the same.
Yeah, so the fact that it was going to be a Wizards created set, that was something they've been wanting to push for a long time. and the companies that were in Japan who were basically owning the games weren't too keen on it.
Articles written at the time paint a slightly clearer picture of the two businesses butting heads. The Seattle Puget Sound Business Journal and ICV2 asserted that Nintendo was willing to allow Wizards to release Jamboree, but only if in return, Wizards would share industry secrets with them. So, at the end of it all, Jamboree wasn't released because Wizards wouldn't share those secrets. However, I think the truth lies yet further in a slightly larger third version of events. Nintendo only wanted a custodian to the product. Nick15 described how Wizards just did not understand the assignment.
My understanding of the way the Japanese folks intended it to be was Wizards was just the guys printing the cards and distributing it. That's it.
Wizards publicly expressed that they felt it was their duty to craft a true game out of what was just a collectible. The sentiment was super common among both players and developers at the time.
It felt like K-pop. It felt like, the British invasion. It kind of felt like, oh, well, there's this thing, but look how stupid it is.
It was cool, and the numbers were big, and it's a big dragon, so the numbers should be. Sure. But it never felt like it was necessarily designed from a balance standpoint.
Sure. Like there was a rebellion within Duelist of the Magic players being like, get this shit out of our magazine. Pretty quickly it was clear that Pokemon was going to need its own space.
Soon, however, game errors caused by Wizards arose, such as this error, which was maybe the first documented one in August 1999. Wizards had been hired to produce the cards only. However, it became increasingly common that if Wizards altered a card, an error was introduced. Take for example the Black Star promo Dark Persia. After Wizards forgot to turn on a visibility layer in Photoshop, the card was printed incorrectly with no HP. This led to a several-month delay of its release. If you look at the total list of Wizards Black Star promos, you can see that their success rate was 44%, mostly wrong. But, despite that, in April of 2000, Wizards finally received permission to make a wholly original card. The end product was Dark Raichu in the Team Rocket set, but its creation delayed the American Team Rocket set by 3 months, an eternity by card game standards. Nick15 described that situation.
Dark Raichu took the Team Rocket set like 3 extra months to be released just because it took so long to convince them to make that card. Because Wizards of the Coast spent so much time trying to convince them to do it, just one card. And basically after that one card, they basically figured, okay, the floodgates open.
After this mild victory and the floodgates apparently being opened, Wizards decided that they could do an entire set, which would be Jamboree.
However, Wizards had a bizarre plan. They made it clear to fans that their intent was to create new cards in the form of Jamboree, which would run concurrently alongside Nintendo's own new Pokemon card sets. Wizards told fans that their game plan was to create Jamboree and Legendary Collection 2 as Wizards cards, whereas Nintendo would be making ADV-era cards or Ruby and Sapphire-era cards. Wizards explicitly told fans not to bring Wizards cards to Nintendo events or vice versa. However, Nintendo made it clear that there was no issue with this. During this time, Satoru Iwata rose to president of Nintendo. I speculate when Satoru Iwata became president of Nintendo, he first tried to work with Wizards, but they shot down his proposals. I think it had much less to do with Jamboree itself, and everything to do with consolidating Pokemon into one entity, where a rogue branch that wouldn't play ball didn't fit. Although bringing up Iwata may seem completely out of left field, Peter Whitley actually brought this up when we spoke. Here, he comments that the entire fight came down to a spat between the higher-ups, who at this point were Satoru Iwata and Vince Galori.
I think that it was mostly a matter between the presidents and the VPs of Wizards battling with the presidents and VPs of whoever was involved in Japan. Sure. And other licensors across the world too, who were like, fuck, we got a hit. We need to renegotiate. We got to deal with these,
Let's take a small side tangent and observe how Iwata thought.
At the start of the recently published Iwata memoir, Ask Iwata, Iwata tells a story of the difficult decisions it took for him to save HAL Laboratories, who are now extremely successful from their famous Kirby franchise. HAL had only worked on contract on IPs they didn't own, creating hits for the NES such as Pinball. However, HAL didn't earn any royalties from this work, only flat fees. So like when their games exploded, they saw no money. Further, they received no revenue from sales of those games overseas due to, if I may, loose license contracts. Eventually, the then CEO of HAL asked Iwata to take over, and Iwata inherited a company deeply in debt. So the first order of business to save HAL was to have control over their licenses, and to create a game based on their own IP. Iwata ended development on all games HAL was working on at the time, to instead focus on an original game, which would become Kirby, which started pulling HAL out of debt.
Thank you for the great art, Flushily.
During what would become the famously difficult GameCube years, Iwata joined Nintendo. Seems his first move was to bring the licenses in-house. Peter Whitley said that Nintendo felt they had given away too much in the initial agreement, which Iwata had not been a part of.
There was some sort of bad blood because Nintendo had believed that they had given away the whole show to Wizards in the first contract that they made.
The person originally in charge of distributing the license was Ishihara. Here, in an Iwata Ask segment, Ishihara seems to describe that even he feels he was too loose with the various Pokemon licenses, highlighting the trading card game specifically. In the next section of that same Iwata Ask segment, Ishihara comments how he knew it was important to control the various Pokemon licenses, but that they had been too distributed to too many companies and globally, so it was too difficult of a task. However, Iwata had an idea to solve it. He formed the Pokemon Company, appointing Ishihara as CEO, with the main focus of the company being the organization and management of Pokemon's licenses. This wasn't the first time Iwata had helped Pokemon either, or even Ishihara specifically. In 1995, for the release of the original Pokemon games, Iwata helped establish Creatures, placing Ishihara in the lead. Then, when Iwata became the president of Nintendo in 2002, Pokémon TCG was experiencing its first decline with suffering sales. In America, Wizards had artificially inflated the market.
And that's forcing parents to shell out more money.
In California, these things are $12 a pack. This one box there has tripled in price. So it's caused the price of the packs to go from about $2.99 all the way up to currently at about $6.99.
In just a month?
Less than a month. About a week and a half to 2 weeks.
When the Pokemon TCG first came out in Japan, packs cost about $3 and had about 10 cards, which had exactly one holo. When the Pokemon TCG first came out in America, packs cost about $3 and had about 10 cards, with about one holo. It was now about one holo per 3 packs. Peter Whitley expanded on this, talking about how Wizards used Pokemon as a second go at Magic the Gathering, a new way for them to squeeze the margins they couldn't previously.
See, Pokemon is basically following Magic's sort of template, but improvements are being made. Like if you could back up and do Magic again, like having fewer cards in the booster, for example, now's your chance. You got Pokemon. If we didn't have to pay for all this luscious art in Magic, like if we could use cartoons, well, there we go. If we only had a televised cartoon to support, well, here comes Pokemon, and it's already got that. There was all these things that were sort of ripe in Pokemon for a hit.
Everybody kind of looked down their nose a little bit at Pokemon.
One thing I remember them saying that the big mistake that we made with Pokemon was that we should have printed it on cheaper paper. Yeah, like the whole idea that Pokemon should have been a premium cardstock like Magic, for him, was a waste of thinking.
This is horrible. We hate this game. It's mass market, it's dumbed down, it's got ugly anime artwork, and there are cartoons. This is not a serious game, like Magic is.
Just a jackass of a quote, right? Oh my god. Okay. Peter Atkinson, CEO of Wizards, upon seeing Pokemon TCG for the first time. Excerpt from So Do You Wear a Cape, available on Google Books. Link down below. Or how about this section from Wizards' own FAQ? Some people are saying with all the cards and added confusion, Pokemon will be like MTG. Any plans to avoid doing this? Pokemon is much more basic than Magic. Think of Pokemon like checkers and Magic like chess, but with many more pieces. Then, prices rose even more. They brought the price of a pack from $3 to $3.29. Fans noticed this, and also noticed that a pack of 11 Pokemon cards was now more expensive than a pack of 15 Wizards' own Magic the Gathering cards. Confronted by this, Wizards said the price difference was due to licensing fees from Nintendo that caused the cards to cost much, much more. However, Peter Whitley spoke on this and said the truth was very much that Wizards was just pocketing the money.
A Magic illustration by Mark Zug.
Sure.
You have to pay him, you have to wait for the painting to get done, you have to give him good art and instruction, and it's a conversation that delivers an awesome piece of art at the end. And that's why Magic has so much awesome art. With Pokemon, all of the art is just flat, vector, cartoon, whatever. And so we don't have to do anything except for maybe redraw it to make it big, so we can use it large. The cards themselves only cost a penny to make or 2 pennies to make or whatever. They're not expensive to make. The fact that they did not get what they wanted out of the contract, and then at some point Wizards didn't get what they wanted out of the contract, I think is kind of a laughable conflict. It's like bullshit. You could have put 30 cards in a booster and charged $6. Hell, you could have probably put 50 cards in a booster and charged $3. You know, like that's the game didn't require them to put them in boosters at all. So the fact that they were saying, "Oh, that's how much we had to charge," that's stupid. It's just dumb. It's just greedy. It's just so shady, you know, for kids, for young people who they don't have any money. They're like, "Mom, mom, mom."
They're spending a lot of money, a whole lot of money in here. Like every Saturday, they spend bukus of money on these cards. I like Pokemon because it just kind of becomes a habit.
And that's the magic of Pokemon.
So what happens when you do collect them all? Did Wizards not still deserve more of your money? No, Wizards said, here's a new thing. You haven't collected them all. It's called foil.
So there's really some kind of interesting and I think insidious, because that's just where I personally stand on it, marketing things. Because really, they have a good game in Magic. Magic doesn't need foils, you know? Pokemon doesn't need foils. Until you get into the fact that you want to sell them every single card, and then suddenly you need foils, because it's not about playing the game, it's about collecting all the cards.
With Pokemon, you want to sort of encourage the gotta catch them all, the Pokedex filling out. So if your Magmar isn't very good, you gotta make a pre-release Magmar so that there's a reason to care about it.
That's right.
Then, Wizards started selling above their own MSRP. This fan is asking why a booster box, with 36 packs, costs more than 36 times 4, even though boosters are currently $3.29. And don't forget, Wizards had various internal mechanisms to remind people that these things were worth money. They were commodities first. Peter Whitley described that the price codex in the back of the do list was to do just that.
There was a lot of stuff around that Pokemon craze that Wizards was really quick to pump. Really quick to like, fuck yeah, this is a money train. The prices in the do list was a way of reminding people that there's like value in the cards. That they should buy the cards because to remind them that they appreciate in time, or they might get their chase card, or they, you know, whatever the Charizard. And Wizards loves that, right? Because why wouldn't they?
So while Nintendo was suffering, Wizards, they had drained the franchise. For example, take the CEO of Wizards of the Coast from 2000 to 2005, Chuck Webner. If you look at his bio on LinkedIn, it literally says he realized royalty income exceeding $20 million by exploiting intellectual properties and patent licensing opportunities. This is not that hard to get.
So far this year, sales of trading cards, toys, and video games surpassed $500 million in the U.S. Another $4 billion was sold overseas. Hasbro, one of Nintendo's 100 U.S. licensees, is still fighting to keep up with demand, even after boosting production capacity 20 times.
We expect this to probably be the biggest success in the toy industry's history.
Still, I think Iwata tried to unify the two divisions, and I think Wizards missed the mark. One key example of Wizards refusing this unison, or at least accidentally terminating it, was at E3 in 2002. Nintendo's booth featured e-reader cards shown for the first time to the public in English, but produced by Media Factory, not Wizards of the Coast. The back had been completely changed and matched the new Japanese cards. Some fans noticed this and asked on WizPoc forums, receiving multiple conflicted opinions. Eventually, Master Trainer Mike, that's Mike Gills, commented on the situation, saying that they were real, but relax, the backs would not be changed. I just put the cards in sleeves like one time. Literally, Japan did exactly this with the Neo Generation Change Tournament. Let's look at it from Iwata's point of view. You've just introduced a whole new era to the cards, the e-reader era, and you are apparently completely reliant on one American printing studio to get it done. Check out Master Trainer Pat saying as much right here.
But at the time, I think only certain printers really knew how to do, or to do it right, trading card games.
So if you want to keep doing e-reader, you need to see if you can still print cards with that printer, but without Wizards. Patrick Swift revealed the never-before-known moment that Wizards actually learned they would lose the license.
The infamous promo sheet that we didn't have printed. PBM sent us a promo sheet, and they just saw Pokemon and thought it would be us. Well, it was not commissioned by us. It was, I don't even recall the name of the character, the leaf type character, but it didn't have our name on it, and it said the Pokemon Company, and somebody's like, this is not, we didn't make this card. So that caused this whole ripple effect up the chain of command until we're all sitting in an Pokemon all hands meeting where they're like, yeah, the writing's on the wall. They're probably going to make a play to take this license from us.
All right, so let's take a quick mini research tangent and see what card Pat might have been talking about, because it is too interesting, so let's figure this out. Most likely, it was this Celebi right here, which is scanned from my own collection. Thank you. This Celebi is a leaf type, as you might notice, but also the name of its attack is literally Leaf Slice. This particular card was the second e-reader promo physically released, and was distributed at Nintendo's own Space World convention. For that, they wanted to have new promos, and for that, they need Wizard's friend PBM Graphics. Okay, also, so this is a P promo, and those are the first time that Nintendo's promos were labeled with the black star that clearly emulates the Wizards of the Coast star, so it seems like they were trying to see if they could carry the branding over. There's also a P promo Trico, who is also a leaf monster, but due to timing, I think Celebi is the stronger candidate. Here's another reason I think it's that Celebi. At that same 2002 E3, for some bizarre reason, Nintendo sent this promotional art to various news outlets. In fact, Wizards.com even used the same Japanese Celebi to show off the e-reader. Okay, so I know that was sort of bad. Let's get back to hearing what happened when Wizards first learned they were going to lose the license.
The all-hands meetings became more and more, I guess, a little stressful, and people were like, the writing's on the wall, and Vince Kaluri would have to say, you know, there's probably more guts coming.
Holy crap. Wizards' response was Scorched Earth mode.
They kind of went into, like, Scorched Earth mode. And I don't know if there were stages in between that, but it quickly escalated into, we don't want to leave them with any good stuff.
By the time Nintendo and Wizards contract had soured, our VP at the time, I think it was Vince Kaluri, basically threatened Nintendo with a negotiation tact that was basically salt the earth, where he was like, if you want to take the contract back, then we're going to produce with our last season, our last set, we're going to produce so many cards at such a deep discount that it's going to completely flood the market with cards and shit the bed for you.
I still know Peter Atkinson. I still know some of these people up at Wizards. I think there was a very altruistic, you know, even though they wanted to, you know, kind of ruin Pokemon on the way out.
Wizards decided to vent the supply. Pat described.
I mean, all the promo cards, all the backlog of sets, all the product and customer service and an organized play. He was at one point tasked with just giving all that away. Or making it go away. Trash it basically, but he gave me a bunch of it. And we both took as much as we ever wanted. Wizards was like, make this stuff go away. We don't want to turn anything over.
The legend was that he was basically like, well, you're not going to take the license away in this way, because if you do that, then we're just going to dump all this product that we have on our hands, and it's going to ruin the market.
Organized Play was simply not interested in trying.
I don't think Organized Play wanted to put any effort into really putting on a good show or good tournaments.
But in reality, sometimes that kicked ass for the consumer. Wizards ran fan appreciation tournaments, FAT, yes, where entry was as low as $6 and minimum prizing was 16 packs. Maximum prize? That was a loose baggie of 1,000 hollows where literally 200 were random. Probably this was Wizards venting this up. No, of course it was. I don't know. Other times, goofy stuff like this happened. Check it out. Boozer totally nerfed a fighting monster just because he was salty and it was killing his Dark Raichu. Here's original base set Hitmonchan with 70 HP. And then here's Wizard's own best of game Hitmonchan with 60 HP, supposedly a typo. But do notice that makes it weaker to Wizard's own original creation, the Dark Raichu. Here you can see Mike indifferent of that Hitmonchan's error, and here you can see implying that he did it on purpose. Patrick Swift commented that the fallout from this was that Wizards completely lost respect in Japan, with some employees even leaving to go to Konami and start on Yu-Gi-Oh!
The assistant product manager for us moved on to there. He's still at Konami. Those guys got kind of a second redemption because we lost a license and a bit of a loss of face in Japanese culture. And they asked for penance and got jobs out of it.
After all was said and done, it's hard to say whether damage was done to the Pokemon brand. The TCG did experience a valley in sales, but as we can see now, Pokemon is going strong and is literally the number one IP in the world. Wizards themselves certainly felt the ramifications. Maybe one day more will be uncovered, or somebody will find Wizards missing cards, but until then, we finally actually saw some Jamboree. So if you like this, I'm going to try to keep my channel going with other smaller videos concerning Pokemon. A lot of them are made of things that I discovered while doing the research on Jamboree, but that weren't necessarily directly related to Jamboree or felt a bit too tangential. I hope you enjoyed this.